Do you love Scotch? Do you love Manhattans? It certainly seems like you do, according to our video views, maybe almost as much as me, so I thought it was about time that I introduced you to the Rob Roy, which is a Manhattan variation using Scottish whisky instead of American whisky. However, I also wanted to show you the Bobby Burns, which is a variation on that variation. So why don't we make a proper showdown of it and let the battle of the Scotch Manhattans commence. Us Scots weren't honestly the quickest to embrace cocktail culture, as much as there are plenty of world-class bars there now. When I was back home about 12 years ago, I went into a pub and asked for a shandy, which is just a mixture of lager and lemonade, and was told quite seriously, "We don't do cocktails here, lass." Thankfully, American bartenders have always enjoyed mixing with Scotch, and so both of these drinks were actually invented in New York, despite their proud Scottish namesakes. Rob Roy McGregor was a 17th century outlaw who was dubbed the Scottish Robin Hood. His life was used as inspiration for many pieces of art over the years and embroidered somewhat. One of these was an operetta which debuted on Broadway in the 1890s. Just around the corner from there was a brand new glitzy hotel called the Waldorf Astoria, and they decided that such an incredible man needed an incredible drink to match, and the Rob Roy was born. Robert Burns was a Scottish poet. In fact, I do have to admit that my first ever tattoo was a quote of his in true introspective teenage style. Bobby Burns cocktails are often drunk to celebrate Burns Day in January, but it has been suggested that the drink was actually named after a cigar salesman in New York City rather than the bard himself, which is a little bit less romantic. The Waldorf Astoria is also often credited with this one. The first written recipe for it is actually in Harry Craddock's Savoy Cocktail Book in 1930, but Craddock doesn't claim it, so it was obviously around before then. The two are almost identical, except that the Bobby Burns includes a dash of herbal liqueur. So I was always taught Benedictine, and that's how I remembered which one was which with the alliteration, so Bobby Benedictine Burns. However, actually looking through recipes, some recommend Drambuie instead, which being a Scottish whisky liqueur probably actually fits the theme a little bit better. Now, some things that I know that you know I find really important in cocktail making are balance and simple and effective flavor combinations. And you could say that those are some things which are also important in a good skincare regime. And if you think that transition was smooth, then you should see how your skin's going to feel after you use this system. Thank you very much to Tiege Hanley, who are sponsoring today's video. Tiege Hanley is uncomplicated skincare for men. So they've essentially designed a really fuss-free system. So they just send out to you exactly what you need and tell you how much of it to use and in what order and all of that kind of thing. You get really clear instructions with it. So you get all of your different little pots and potions here. They almost look like little bitters bottles and cocktail ingredients. A nice big daily face wash because, you know, cleansing is very important. You only have one face. A little scrub, so, you know, exfoliator guy, I'm assuming. Eyes. This is definitely one that I need. Working nights, I always have to have little kind of eye creams and things. Super serum. Also definitely getting on the serum bandwagon at the moment. Very good for hydration. And then this is quite cool, so there's a little AM and PM. Because Tiege Hanley are sponsoring the video today, they are offering you guys a really great deal. If you follow the link in the description below, then not only will you get the full system for the very best price, but they'll also throw in a free gift for you. So click on the link and get started for just $25. So we're going to get started with the Rob Roy. For both of these drinks, I'm going to use a blended whiskey. So that is a mixture of malt whiskey and grain whiskey. So just generally a little bit lighter in body and kind of less intensely flavored than your single malts. Something like Dewar's is really good because it does have a tiny little bit of kind of smoke and peat to it that gives that bit of interest. But it's also sherry cask whiskey. It's quite kind of round and smooth. So just stick with the same one for both in the interests of science. For your vermouth, I like to just keep something pretty classic. So just going with the Cinzano, it is sort of their premium 1757 one, which just has, again, a bit more kind of body and depth than the classic Cinzano Rosso. And then this little guy is just some Angostura Bitters. At work, we just pop it in the little dropper because we buy those obnoxiously large ones of it. I've seen a few recipes which recommend a slightly sweeter bitters like Peychaud, but I just like, again, just like the classic, that real kind of woody spice and that really distinctive cola note that you get from the Angostura brings it all together nicely. So we're just going to start with 45 mils of whiskey. Some original recipes actually recommended equal parts of whiskey and vermouth, but again, kind of similar to the Manhattan and even the Martini, it's generally evolved to be a little bit more spirit forward. Then we're going to go 20 mils of vermouth and just a couple of dashes of Angostura. Such a simple drink. Again, I am using a blended whiskey, but it's definitely something that you can do a single malt with or use kind of a more special bottle in because it really does let the spirit shine here. Now the garnish for this is going to be a cherry actually in the glass, but I also like to do just a little spritz of orange oil over the top. The warm orange notes just work really nicely and bring it all together. And I've got some little cherries ready down here for when we're ready for them. So just going to stick some ice in the glass. Give it a bit of a stir. There's heaps of orange notes coming through already, so I think the twist is going to work really well. And I'm just going to grab my glass out of the freezer there and use a little strainer. This one's actually a bit of a hybrid between a hawthorn and a julep strainer. If you haven't seen our video on sort of bar tools and things, you should check it out. But it fits nicely into the glass and lets you pour out with one hand, which is quite nice. Then we'll just go a sharp fold with the skin facing out to express the oils over the top. I like to do a little rub around the stem too so that it kind of gets on your hands and just, just means that it sort of increases your exposure to that lovely smell. And then last but not least, a little cocktail cherry in the bottom, the Rob Roy. Now onto the Bobby Burns. Benedictine is a French herbal liqueur. It is based on neutral grain spirit, so fairly light in body, and then sweetened with honey, which is what I think works so well with the whiskey and the vermouth there to just kind of make it very smooth and drinkable. Drambuie is also a herbal liqueur, also sweetened with honey, but this one is based on whiskey, so it does have a bit more body to it and quite a lot of spice. With maybe the herbal aspect taking a little bit of a back seat, but absolutely more than welcome to use this one instead, and it makes a really delicious drink too. I'm kind of used to using Benedictine, so I'm going to stick with that. So we're going to start with 40 mils of whiskey, 20 mils of Rosso vermouth, 10 mils of Benedictine. Now, obviously, because you already do have that little modifier in there in the Benedictine, the bitters aren't really strictly necessary, but I do still like that kind of spice backbone in the background as well. For this one, I actually do a little lemon twist instead of orange on the Rob Roy, just because I think that it works really nicely with the herbal kind of fresher notes of the Benedictine and lifts them all up. And this will also get a little cherry at the end. Good. So once you've added your ice, stirred, and it's perfectly diluted, just use your little strainer to hold the ice back in the mixing glass and then pour into your coupe. Just a sharp fold with your lemon over the drink to get all the oils on the top there, and then a little cherry in the bottom. Bobby Burns. So I've never actually tried these two side by side before. I do know which one I think I like the best, but it will be interesting to do a little compare and contrast. Start with the Rob Roy since he was first. I did put it in a tall glass as well because in my head Rob Roy McGregor was probably a pretty strapping man. Really lovely warm kind of orange and coffee notes on the nose. It's a pretty perfect digestif. The Dures gives it kind of enough body without it being overpowering. You're definitely, going to happily be able to drink the whole thing of that. And it's all quite still juicy and fresh tasting. Now, Bobby Burns. But I do think just the added Benedictine in there, it's just another whole layer of flavour. Again, really nice and quite like fresh tasting for a really boozy stirred down drink. It's not it's not real chewy or anything. It's still actually quite almost zippy on the palate. But then you also have that kind of honey coming through and that more kind of almost like thyme sort of crushed herb sort of flavour, which just adds a little bit of interest. So I did think I was, the Bobby Burns I kind of know is one of my favourites, but yeah, I do think side by side it does win, but both absolute bangers in my opinion. Two delicious Manhattans, as complex as the men whose names they bear, although perhaps a little bit more refined. The Rob Roy and the Bobby Burns, so now you know.